Our last item for consideration is H.R. 5158 to direct the Secretary of Transportation to request nominations for and make determinations regarding roads to be designated under the National Scenic Byways Program. I ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Highways and Transit, call up H.R. 5158, and that it be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. It's my understanding that the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Graves, will offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute to the bill. Without objection, we will call up the amendment in the nature of a substitute, and then we will give one statement on both the ANS and the underlying bill. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of substitute number 44, offered by Mr. Graves, Missouri.
Thank the gentleman. I want to thank Mr. Cicilline. Did I pronounce that right? Cicilline, okay. And Mr. Poe for their work on this legislation. The bill requires the Department of Transportation to undertake a process to designate roads under the National Scenic Byways Program. The last time the department designated roads under the program was 2008, and I urge all members to support 5158. And now I recognize the other Mr. Graves. Good thing we have two Graves here, so I can't screw it up. So I recognize Mr. Graves to explain the bill and the ANS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My father was unable to be here today and asked me to handle this for him. H.R. 5158 would direct Secretary of Transportation to solicit nominations for roads to be designated in the National Scenic Byways Program in the Federal Register. The ANS makes a few modifications to the bill, including enabling the Secretary to use a historically used process for soliciting nominations in designated roads. It incorporates a reference to the National Scenic Byways Program in Title 23 of U.S. Code and provides the Secretary with a more flexible time frame to publish the nominations, the designated roads, but still within 1 year of the nomination period. Mr. Chairman, I move that 5158, as amended, be reported favorably, approved and reported favorably to the House.
Thank the gentleman, and I have to tell you, you must take after your mother with those good looks, not your father. I hope somebody tells that to Sam Graves. I now recognize Mr. DeFazio for a statement.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Well, I strongly support this legislation. It'll create a process, to hopefully reinvigorate designation of National Scenic Byways. I worked on this issue with Senator Rockefeller many years ago, and it was included in the IST bill in 1991. And since that time, we've had 150 scenic roads designated, a number in my home state. And unfortunately, in MAP 21, the program the funding was eliminated, but the authority to designate was retained. Unfortunately, DOT hasn't designated anything since that time. This legislation will ensure that once again there's a process for states, tribes, and federal land management agencies to request designations for roads that meet the scenic byways criteria. I want to thank the sponsor of the legislation, David Cicilline from Rhode Island. He's also co-chair of the Scenic Byways Caucus, of which I'm a member, for introducing this legislation. It's bipartisan. I'm not aware of any opposition, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
I thank the gentleman. Any other members wish to be heard on the? I want to make a note for the record that Mr. Desaunier is wearing a short sleeve shirt also, so there you go. We will now consider the bill for amendment. Are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? If not, the question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor? Your son did it for you. Question amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The amendments in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Which Mr. Graves am I supposed to recognize now? The father or the son? I recognize the younger Graves.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk asking unanimous consent that the amendment be considered as read.
Question on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. The bill is as amended, is approved and reported favorably to the House.